You know, there are quite contradictory stories about your childhood. There's this kind of general version of the near slum conditions in Hoboken. And then there are others. There was an article some years ago by a very good magazine writer who said that this isn't so, that your family was not necessarily destitute.
He is partially right about my general upbringing. I never wanted for anything, but we did not have an abundance of anything. It was a semi-slum area. It was typical of the middle 20s and the late 20s and through the Depression. And it was pretty rough, but I've read and been told, or rather asked questions concerning gang wars and so on and so forth. Well, there weren't gang wars, but there were beefs and there were battles about position and who should cross the line into where we lived and cross the line into where they lived, you see. And I must say there were many times when I had to go on an errand that I skirted certain areas of the town, you know, because the cry went up, kill the Dago when he comes through the corner of town.
By the late 1940s, the kid from Hoboken who stepped off the Paramount stage into fame and fortune was getting too big for his britches.
Separated from his wife Nancy, he pursued Ava Gardner across a couple of continents. He divorced Nancy, married Ava, divorced her. He was wearing his fame badly, and his fortune appeared to be running out.
I wasn't paying enough attention to my job at the time. I think I was tired. It's not an excuse, it's a fact. I think I was weary because I had worked tremendously for the years preceding that period, worked constantly, 300 days a year or more in many instances. And I was traveling constantly and just doing all kinds of work. And I had a personal problem, which I will not go into. When I was ready and I had had enough rest, or I took time to have all of the cobwebs blown out of my head, I went back to work. I changed record companies, changed attorneys, changed accountants, changed picture companies, and changed my clothes, and just went right back to work again.
In 1953, Sinatra headed back to the top in From Here to Eternity. Sinatra won an Oscar, and his earnings per picture jumped from $8,000 to $200,000. Sinatra was back. Not all of Sinatra's performances have been on film, and his personal life has been reviewed more often than his movies. The bad press that had dogged him through his dark days followed him into the light. And if stories about him suggested he was enjoying all of the excesses available to a man with power and money, it did not seem to matter to his followers. It may have accounted for some of them.
What I do with my life is of my own doing. I live it the best way I can. I've been criticized on many, many occasions because of acquaintances and what have you. But I don't do those things to have anybody follow me in doing that same thing, is what I mean.
Do you think your boiling point is low?
Not anymore. It used to be. I think that comes with a normal growing up and the way of living, friends, people with whom you become acquainted. I've always admired people who are gentle and who have great patience. And apparently what I've done is, without knowing it, is I've aped these people and begun to follow that kind of line. When I say I had a low boiling point, it doesn't mean I went around kicking dogs and old ladies and people.
There were always stories that Sinatra was a quick man with his fists, that he had struck several newsmen.
Not true, no. The only time I had any physical contact with a newspaper man was a man who's now dead, who said some pretty nasty things about me in a column for about 2 years, and they were all gross lies, and that didn't bother me so much until he once said several things to me in person. And I reached the boiling point, and it was all over. It was an unfortunate incident, but frankly, if he were alive and he'd said it again, I would do it again, because he was just that kind of a man. But otherwise, all of that is a gross lie. All of this physical jazz is nothing. It doesn't mean anything. I've had people say to me in public places, you're really a tough guy. And it was so foreign that I was, in the beginning when I first started to get it, I thought, I was really shocked. I thought, well, what started all of this thing? Trying to think to myself, what started all this thing? Then came the ridiculous accusations and statements that I was consorting with mobsters and gangsters, and that added fire to it after a while. And I just kept resenting it all the time, but I just couldn't stop it. There was no way to stop it.
In 1963, that subject was back in the news. The state of Nevada cast a first stone and forced Sinatra to sever any connections he had with gambling casinos in that state. An underworld character who had been blacklisted by the state's gaming board was discovered on the premises of Sinatra's Cal Neva Lodge. That story and his involvement in other interests in Las Vegas didn't help that new image he'd been trying to create. I asked him about that.
The fact that I used to be involved was a legitimate business reason. We built a hotel in Las Vegas, and finally there was so much work to be done of my own natural vocation, pictures, singing, recording, that I just dropped all of the fringes of businesses. But I do meet all kinds of people in the world because of the natural habitat from day to day, in theatrical work, in nightclub work, in concerts, wherever I might be, in restaurants. You meet all kinds of people. So that there's really not much to be said about that, and I think the less said, the better, because there's no answer. When I say no, it's no, but for some reason it keeps persisting, you see, and consequently I just refuse to discuss it because it can't make a dent anywhere.
The press also jumped on him for the campaign help he gave his friend John F. Kennedy. Some claimed Sinatra and what was called the Klan was too involved, had imposed themselves on the Kennedys.
Nobody got involved directly with the family or with the policy making of the campaign, because that wasn't our affair. It didn't concern us. We were just real rabid rooters. We were giving it the college try is basically what the whole thing was all about. And I can understand people saying that we might have imposed our intentions upon the Kennedys, or tried to, because if they can't beat you one way, they're going to try to beat you another way, you know, these scandalous statements.
Sinatra has said that if the press reports world news as it reports him, we are all in trouble. But few people are ever represented to their own satisfaction by the people who write about them. For whatever truth or untruth lies beneath these headlines, it is probable that no one who has been exposed to the public as much as Frank Sinatra has is much different than the public thinks he is. His daughter, Nancy.
Daddy loses his temper, it's headlines. The fact that he raises millions of dollars for underprivileged children all over the world by giving of his time and his own money, that doesn't rate headlines. But if he gets angry and has an argument with someone, headlines. So you figure it out. I don't understand it at all.
We asked Sinatra if he didn't feel that he had a responsibility to his millions of fans.
Yes, I believe so. I don't know how, but I believe I feel and have a responsibility. My number one responsibility is my job to them. Bogart, when he was alive, once told me, we were rather good friends through the years, and he said, the only thing you owe the public is a good performance.